Earlier in this chapter, we used Win Automation to build an application that allowed you to enter some data into the screen, and it then went away and populated an underlying application, in this occasion the training CRM. And we said at the time we'd come back for a final demo that would actually enhance that application and actually update two different underlying applications. In this case, a second application called Insightly. You may recall that the process we went through initially was to develop the physical objects. We provided the selectors that gave access to the Contacts tab, the New button, and the individual fields on the dialog box that entered title, first name, surname, and email, and then the Add button, which finally populated the database. We also created our own presentation layer and a button on there which ran a routine called Add Contact to Training CRM. We're going to be changing that bit slightly as part of the new update that we're about to do. And we also constructed the business logic, which initially displays your presentation layer and then goes away, runs the CRM app, clicks the Contacts tab, clicks the New button, copies the details from your new presentation dialog, and then clicks Add to update the database. Finally, the database is shut down. The new logic we're going to build is going to run a different application called Insightly, and it's going to go through the process of navigating through to the details where you can update the screen and then finally clicking Add to update those details. Very similar to the original application, but as we'll see, the locations of the buttons and the layout of the screen is slightly different. We're going to create a second function called Add Contact to Insightly. And we're going to go back to our presentation layer, creating another new function called Add Contact button. And that Add Contact button function will call first the update to the training CRM and then call our Add Contact to Insightly. So you'll see from one single data entry, two underlying applications then being updated. Okay, that's the plan. Let's have a look at how we do that. So we're going to revisit our application to now run a second component of the automation, which will update the database called Insightly. So the steps we're going to have to go through with Insightly are as follows. First of all, we're going to have to log in. So while we're here, we're going to start collecting some of the information that we're going to need when we run the automation. So I'm going to nip back into the application and do the add control. So we've now captured the email address. Password field, and the button to click for login. Now we're going to have to step through that process ourselves, so I'm just going to log in. No, I can't really type that fast. I just paused the video while I entered those details. So the next thing we're going to have to do is click on the Contacts tab over here. So we're going to capture that control, clicking the Add Control button. But there's something to be very careful of on this particular screen. I've seen it before where there are different components. You can see two being displayed here. This is actually just the image, whereas this is the actual button. So sometimes locating the right control that you need for your application can require a little bit of fine tuning. So let's capture that. Great. And The next thing that we're going to need to capture will be on the contact screen. So long as I don't hold down the left control key, I can navigate normally using the mouse clicks. So I'm going to navigate now onto the contact screen. And the next button I'm going to need to press is this new contact button up here. There we go. So you can see the orange border just selecting that field. Let me just try that again. Okay. Now what's interesting about this button is the naming convention when we see this come back. The button is actually called Button Danger, which is sort of fine if you can remember that's what it is. But you can rename all of these items so they're a little bit more meaningful, which I'm going to do on this occasion. So rename control, and rather than Button Danger, we'll call it Button New Contact. It doesn't change the actual selector that's underneath this. This is just a meaningful name that we use when referencing that particular control. So we now navigate to the next new control page, and we're now going to have to populate each of these fields, which I'm going to pause the video and just do that for you. So what we've done is we've captured the prefix, the first name, the surname, the email address, and the save button, and you can see them all here within the application for that web page. So we're ready to start preparing our new function, which is to add the contact to Insightly. So I'm going to go over here on the right hand side to add function, and we're going to create add contact to Insightly. And we're also going to add the new function that we're going to include on the button of our presentation layer, our form, which is going to run first of all this function and then our new Insightly function. And we're going to call that function add contact button. And we'll see that used again in a minute when we look at the presentation layer. So what's the first thing that we need to do when we start adding the contact to Insightly? Well, the very first thing that we need to do is, of course, launch Internet Explorer. So we will look for launch new Internet Explorer. There we go. And we need to give this the HTTP address, which is, I'm going to copy, I think. To make sure I get that right. So, okay, that. So that's now opened Internet Explorer, and it will be on the very first page, the login page. So the fields we need to complete now, if we look down here at the page, are the login and the password. So the next thing we need to do is populate the text field. And of course, I'll just be careful not to use the wrong one and use the one that's populate a text field on a web page. Again, we can look at our repository. It's only going to show us the fields that we've set up ready, and we'll see down there we've got our logon. Actually, it's the email field is the one that we need to populate first. So, okay, add that, and we're going to add rob.king. Try that again. rob.king wizard.co.uk. Okay. So we're going to do this again, populate text field, this time with the password. Okay, don't worry, I'll be changing the password after I finish the demo. Okay, that. And then we need to press the button for login. Press button on web page, there we go. And we will select login. Okay, so that should now log us into the screen. Now, one of the things we didn't look at last time, we can just do to sort of check that we've done this correctly so far. And we can just run this little bit of code here. And we can do that by right-clicking here and bringing up the menu. And doing start from here. That now runs the application, just simply starting from the Launch Internet Explorer through to entering the email address, through to entering the password, through to clicking the button. And there we see we're logged in. Great. So we know the first few steps are working successfully. So, having got onto that contact screen, we're now going to press a couple more buttons. The first one to go onto contacts and the next one to click on new contact. Rather than just bore you with doing that, I'm going to pause and do that for you. So here you can see I'm pressing the button to navigate to contacts, and then you can see the one that I changed the name of, the new contact button. So we've now got the contacts dialog screen up. So the next step is going to be populating the text fields in the same way as we did on the original with the training application. So populate text field in web page, and the first field is going to be the prefix field or the title. So we'll add that, and we've got our reference back to our original presentation dialog, and if you can't remember the name of that dialog, we can pop this down and just have a look, and we see there the custom dialog results. So we can populate that in the field, but we want to actually include the title in here. And like before, I'm just going to copy that because we're going to use that again as we go through each of the other fields. So that's added the prefix. We'll move to first name. I can double click here and it will put that next in the list. We'll go to last name, which in our little dialog box we called surname. Okay. And finally we have the email address. Which we simply called email. So our last step is simply going to be clicking the save button. So again, we'll look for press button on web page, and we'll just look for that save button. Okay. So the only step left for us to do, having now updated the application within this design, we've decided we will close Internet Explorer. Okay, good. So as far as this piece of the application works, we're ready to go. We're just going to make a couple more tweaks. Do you remember this function over here, the add contact button? So the add contact button is simply there to call the other two functions. Oh no, I've put all of this in the wrong place. So let me just correct that. Fortunately, I can cut that out of there and paste it into the right place. I did miss one. There we go. X. Good. So the add contact button then really is just going to call these two functions in order, and there is a run function. There we have it. So we're going to run first of all the update to the training CRM, and then we're going to run our new Insightly function. So it only remains for us to go back to our custom dialog now and have a look at that button that we press. You may remember in here we simply run the function when the add button is pressed, add contact to training CRM. By now selecting the add contact button, it's now going to run the two functions one after the other. I'm going to make another couple of tweaks while I'm here. I'm going to rename that button to finished, because the dialog is going to stay on the screen. And would allow us to enter multiple pieces of data before we decide we're finished. Okay, that's done. That's okay. I think we're ready to go. So let's see what happens. The dialog is displayed as we did before, and we'll give it some data. And this time, when we press add, we should see the two functions, one run after the other. So, first of all, we'll see the training CRM that we used before, and it's populating the fields, added the record. Now it launches the second application, Insightly, logs us in, and starts navigating us through to the data entry screen. Populates the fields. Let's click save and closes down. And we see contact added message on the screen there before it disappeared. We're back here and we can add further records if we want to, or if we're finished, we click finished. So that's the conclusion of the final demo using Win Automation to create a simple demonstration of a single presentation layer, multiple behind the scenes systems all being populated with the same information. I hope you found that useful, and we'll move on to wrap up. In this demo, we covered only a small amount of the functionality and actions that Win Automation and other automation tools can cover. You can see just by the list on the left hand side of the screens of the types of actions and functionalities that are built in. There's a lot that you can do that will emulate what the human does at the desktop. Win Automation also uses more of a text-based approach to describe each step of the process rather than some of the more model-driven approaches that you see in other applications. It's horses for courses though, and different people prefer different types of approach. I find it a very readable and very simple to use type of tool, and you can see by the speed with which we developed two types of automation, you can do it very, very quickly. But just like all applications, the documentation that you use is still essential. Making sure that you've appropriately documented the applications in advance using either the business process using SciPoc, value stream mapping, process maps, and detailed process maps that drill down to the presentation layer are going to be essential to make sure that applications can be suitably maintained.